Welcome everyone to today's broadcast. It is Productivity Tools for Surveyors in Civil 3D. I'm Brian Lewandowski, the product manager here at CTC for our Civil Express tools, and I'll be giving the presentation today. I want to walk through a variety of tools that relate to surveyors in different stages of their workflows. And so I'm going to highlight a few of them briefly in PowerPoint, and then we're going to jump into Civil 3D to show you how they work. So the first couple here are around topo data processing. One is called point file converter, and what it allows you to do is convert point files from one code list to another. Helps you eliminate having to use multiple code lists in the field, keeps your surveyors a lot happier, but allows you to process them in a different template or coding list if that's needed, perhaps different clients. And it is a standalone tool, so it can be used if, perhaps some data is to be processed in MicroStation, some in Civil 3D, and those are different code lists. Again, you can process or survey in one, process in any number of other code lists. I'll show you how that works in a bit. Survey Sweeper, a simple tool that allows you to work with your survey databases and your DWGs in a lot easier fashion. Basically allows you to be making deletions or modifications to your survey database by simply picking things on the screen. I'll show a real common workflow for Survey Sweeper. Legend creation, I'm going to show you that using Data Wizard. This is about creating project-specific legends automatically. A really handy tool that will scan your drawing. You can limit it to layouts, viewports, you name it, and generate legends specific to that sheet. Or maybe it's a multi-sheet legend across 3 sheets, or maybe the entire project. You can do it all with Data Wizard. And again, it's based on just what's in that DWG. Staking preparation. We have a simple tool called feature line to alignment. This allows you to take feature lines or survey figures and convert them into alignments in profiles. A lot of organizations, surveyors out there, are still just staking with points. Oftentimes, the limitation or the challenge with that is getting that data in the first place. How do I stake something that's more flexible, like an alignment and profile? Well, we're grading with feature lines, and you can't really export those to a data collector. So feature line to alignment allows me to export or convert those rather. And it also works with survey figures. I've got a number of customers who are perhaps surveying some curb that is to be installed on the exact same place after it's torn out. There's not a redesign. You can take those survey figures you generated with your topo data, convert them in alignments and profiles, and then send them to the surveyor to restake when the road is reconstructed. Finally, working with your description keys and your layers, we have Survey Template Manager, and what that allows you to do is to sync your description keys and your figure prefix databases with Excel. And then Layer Boss is a tool that allows you to do the same with your layer manager and your object layer settings as well. I'll show you some workflows with that. So with that, we're going to jump in on the first one here, point file converter. And I'm going to bring up a few Excel examples here. What I've got on the left is an example of a point file with some line work coding in it. Now this one happens to be a numeric point code list, but it could be anything. It could be alpha, anything. And the challenge that we have here is oftentimes this needs to be converted into something else. Maybe you have outside surveyors giving you data, or an example I referred to earlier. Maybe you've got reason to be using 2 or 3 or 4 different code lists. With this tool, you can have your surveyors use one in the field and then translate it once you bring the point files in to be used in the office. So it works on point files, not on your DWG. So let me show you how this works. Say we've got, again, this point file example, and we've got all kinds of things that need to translate. Not only do the survey codes themselves need to change, but some of the line work coding changes, the delimitation, in this case, it's using underscores, maybe it's spaces. So with point file converter, what we can do is we can spell out a translation file is what we call it. And I've got that on the right here, where in the first two columns we simply spell out the first code list and the second code list, what becomes what. And that's a unique thing that you would spell out. So you make these simple Excel files, and then there's more complexity to it as well. For example, row 4 over here, we have a code 301A. Now 301 is to become BC, but there's also suffixes or prefixes for that matter that might play into this. So 301 is to become BC, but also the suffix of A, I can have that be translated to 1. So we can have any combination of these codes using these suffixes being translated into the resultant code using these suffixes. So it will look for those unique suffixes and translate those as well. So we're not doing just one for one, you know, like find and replacing here. Same thing with the feature code delimiter. If that changes, you would spell out one to the other. If it doesn't change, you would just simply put in space, still stays as space. But you have to spell out what these changes are in this case. And then a field code escape, if that would change, you would put in the two different characters. If it's not going to change, you would just put in the bar for both of them. Okay. Looking at Point File Converter, the tool itself, how it works, you simply browse to the translation file. And that's the one I have open in the bottom right corner there. And then you load any number of point files. I'm using just the one here. I'll load that into Point File Converter. You could translate 10 at once though. And a number of the settings here. What column am I going to convert? Most commonly, we're dealing with PNEZD files. That would be the 5th column. That's why I'm spelling out column 5 here. Okay. In my conversion, do I want to ignore the comments after the field code escape? Pretty common. Yes, we'll leave that on. And then some saving options as well. I want to save at the same location, save to a different location. Then we can even name these files differently. So I'm going to just have -converted be created on the new point file that this tool will make. And finally, we can generate a report so that if there are some issues with the translation, it'll tell me exactly what those are. So I'll hit apply here. First thing I get is the report. Now I can copy this out and save it out if I wish. But some of the information here, some of it may not be important because I didn't spell it out in my translation file. For example, I've got some offset coding here. Now that's not changing from one code list to the next, so I can ignore those. But maybe I forgot to account for the OC code, or maybe that stays the same. In that case, you don't need to put it in your translation. So looking down here, again, by the way, it's not just the survey codes, but also your line work codes. So plus becomes B, minus becomes E, so on and so forth. If there's no change, you can leave it out of these first two columns. The report will flag it because it found it and wants you to know that it might be an issue there. But anyway, these reports, they show up if you want. But once you get it ironed out and your crews are, surveying in a standard way, you shouldn't have much for issues in the report, or what does show up are things you're not trying to translate. So opening up File Explorer now. Here is that converted point file. Let's go ahead and open this. I'll put it side by side with the original one, and now you see what we're doing here. If we look at that same row 4, 301A became BC1. Okay, some of these more complex ones with the horizontal and vertical coding, we see the underscores are swapped out for spaces. Okay, so if you're an organization dealing with multiple code lists in this way, you can make it a lot easier on your surveyors, or the flip side, you can be a lot more flexible and handle these different code lists as they come in. So what you would be doing is spelling out any number of translation files, converting from DOT to your company standard, or any number of translations. You simply create 2 or 3 of these translation files, and then you load them right here. To create them, you can open the sample, right here. The tool comes with a sample translation file giving you a few examples. You would take this, spell it out as you see fit. You can change the headers up here to what you want, but the order needs to stay the same because the tool is reading these columns as they are set up right here. And there's nice little instructions over here as well as a user guide that explains how to use it. So that's point file converter. Pretty straightforward, handy little tool. And like I said, it is a standalone tool. You can launch it from within Civil 3D, right up here. But CIM Project Suite will also install a desktop icon that allows you to launch this without even having to start Civil 3D. Okay, the next tool we're looking at is called Survey Sweeper, and it deals with processing your topo survey data. And one of the real nice things about Civil 3D and the survey database is, right, it generates your automatic line work, nothing new there. But as we're working with this data, for example, if I'm making edits to survey figures here, and perhaps there was a point missed and I want to add that in here, it'll redraw that figure for me, okay? And I can fix survey figures like this as well. And the problem we get, got a couple extra ones in there, the problem we get is when we go and do some point editing, for example, maybe there was a B code forgotten here. What's nice is I can redraw my line work, tell it to update based on that change in my coding. But what happens when I do that is these survey figures come back, right? You get duplicate survey figures. Those of you who have worked with this, you know what I'm talking about, generating duplicate survey figures. And so how you have to deal with those is you can't just simply delete them off the screen. You have to go dive into your survey database, is why our break lines are made from our survey database. So you have to remove those from your database, and it gets really clumsy because you're searching through this long list of survey figures. There it is. There's the extra definition. Okay. What Survey Sweeper does, a very simple routine, it just allows me to pick survey figures on the screen, and it'll also delete them out of the database at the same time. I can do the same thing with survey points. If there were some bad shots that were to be removed not only from the drawing, but also the database, I can do the same. So we'll run that. It says, do you want to delete 2 figures and 1 survey point? I'll say yes. And then, of course, looking at our survey figures in the database. See how slow it is? This is why we don't want to deal with the database. We're trimming out. We're just down to those edited survey figures. So a nice little cleanup tool. Looks like I've inserted it twice. That's why I've got 2 building. But anyway, you get the idea. Cleaning up survey figures, survey points that should be removed from both the database and the drawing. All right, moving on. Data Wizard is a tool that allows me to create tables, legends, QTO, all kinds of different things. The scenario I'm going to show you here is where I've got some existing conditions sheets, and I need to generate legends based on what's showing just in these sheets. Now, it could be any number of things. It could be 1 legend for both sheets, 1 per sheet, 1 per project. The example I'll show you is making 1 for each sheet. So if I go ahead and launch Data Wizard, I get an interface that first allows me to choose my drawing sources. I'm going to work with the current drawing, though it could be with an XREF if I have that XREF in here, or both. I can limit this to a layout. In this case, we want to do Site Plan 1, and then I want to actually choose the viewport that I'm going to create the legend from. So that tells me the scaling of the symbology, and it also tells me what's visible there. I can include additional drawings as well if I was doing a project-wide legend. Moving to the next screen here, we have the type of objects I want to scan for. Now I can hit refresh right away, and it'll show me what's in this drawing. It turns out it's just survey points, survey figures, and hatches. Some of you who are using Data Wizard already, you'll notice a couple of these new item types down here, 3D solids and parcels. This is the new release I'm showing you. It's coming out tomorrow or the next day when we button up the last little items, but solids and parcels are in there as well now. So as far as a legend here, we're looking at survey figures, survey points, and hatches. Now I can use some basic exclusion options up here, like exclude frozen layers. Now my filtered list goes down to 25. If we look at the next screen, it shows me what I'm going to show in my legend. If we look at the survey points, for example, I've got signs and trees, catch basin, and we've got a lot of data that's coming through as well. But one of the things we run into is you might get duplicates of something like trees if you've got diameters on them. Or maybe it's catch basins where you've got some description information after it. Either way, what we can do is we can weed out objects based on their initial character. So I can say everything with TRD, starting with TRD, count that as 1. And if I know everything that needs to be in here, I can just spell those out all at once. One of the new features that were just added as well, what we're doing is we're going to be combining like items. We're making a legend. I don't want to show a tree 10 times, but what if we were doing a tree survey with all the information in it? Now I could show a row or for each instance of every point in my drawing. Or I could also generate separate rows for each item as well as a summary. So this is one of the new features where we can do not just summary or QTO legend type tables, but we can also do per instance or per item tables as well. Back to our legend, I might also want to filter by layering. So layers only with SYMB in them. Okay. And this gets real unique, right? Perhaps on my survey figures, I want to filter by layers that just have line in them. Okay. So all these settings, these are remembered each time you launch Data Wizard. You know, remembers the last settings, but you can also save out a template where everything you specify in here will save to a Data Wizard template. So I could call this existing conditions legend, for example. Okay, if I move to the next screen here, we again see what's showing up. Now I'm getting just that one tree, the one sign, and the one catch basin. Again, this is what's going to show up in our table, in our legend. If we look at my survey figures, I've got building lines, edge of concrete, curb and gutter, and then my hatches, I've got 3 hatches showing up as well. Now let's think about the data that we have in our legend itself. What do we care about? We want a symbol to show up, and we also want some kind of description or text. Now this information could come from anywhere, and we choose that right in here, data to extract. Now depending on the object type, I would choose from any number of categories here. Now in this case, I've got layer description that's going to describe my hatches, my survey figures, and my survey points. But I could be pulling through style name, style description, and then here we get into that QTO stuff where I can quantify area quantities, length quantities, volume quantities with solids now added. I can count up things. A variety of other features as well, like northing and easting, elevations, all that kind of stuff we can do in Data Wizard. But in this case, we're just looking at graphics and then the layer description. And when I hit OK to that, you'll see I've got the graphics column. So it doesn't show up here because those are generated once we create the table, and then the layer description itself. On the fourth screen, we have our formatting options. Right at the top, I've got some data sorting. How do I want to sort this? I don't want to do object sorting. I want to control the order of my objects, the groups themselves manually. But then I can sort by any number of things. In this case, it's layer description, so I'll leave that as is. And here's what's going to show up in here, the graphic and then the description itself. Like I was saying, I can change the order of these as I want. I can change the graphic or the layer description. Those columns, order there can change as well. And then finally the output. I can go to Excel or an AutoCAD table. In this case, we'll do an AutoCAD table. I'll click Finish and insert this right in this sheet right here. And you see what it does, right? It inserts for the points a symbol, for the lines a representative length of the line, and then the hatches a sample of the hatch. Now the size of that cell, that was based on that last screen, some of the cell size options that I chose there. But here's the nice thing about Data Wizard. Not only does it scan for what's in here, but it can refresh and update based on what's in here. So this table remembers all those settings so that if I make any kind of changes to it, for example, maybe I'm freezing some of the building hatching, or maybe there's additional data coming into my drawing, more survey data. Now I've got hydrants that show up here. It could be any number of things. All I need to do is run the update table command, choose that table, hit OK, then it's going to rescan based on all those settings, and now we see the building hatching will drop out. The hydrants now show up in there. Okay, so everything's linked, not dynamically, but it'll reread or rescan those objects in your drawing, as well as the layers themselves. If you go and change a layer description, that will change here as well. For example, if I go look at the description for concrete, maybe it was to be concrete pavement. Okay, if I change that layer description for that hatch, I come back here, I run the update table command, hit OK, and now concrete pavement shows up. Okay, so those of you creating legends, people do it a lot of different ways. Oftentimes a one-size-fits-all, and a lot of times the reason for doing that is so you don't have to manually build these for each project, right? Well, you're no longer limited in that way. You can build out these legends easily and quickly based on what's showing up. Now if we look onto the second sheet, we need to make a legend for this one. I simply run the setup table command again, and it's going to remember all the previous settings. I just need to change my layout and my viewport. Now if this was in a different drawing, or perhaps I use Data Wizard to create something else, I could instead come up here to the template and load that existing conditions Data Wizard template, and then it would load all the settings in the entire wizard for me. So users only need to load those templates and then make sure everything is correct, and then insert those tables based on all those settings. So if we toggle through here, we'll see on this results page some of the different objects showing up, survey figures, okay, and finally we'll create a legend for this sheet. And it's different, of course, because we have manholes in here, we have different tree types, we have storm sewer pipe, and we don't have any hatching showing up. So again, specific to the viewport, with all the objects scaling to exact object size in the viewport itself. So that is Data Wizard. Lots of different cases for it, but for survey workflows, right, those survey sheets, existing conditions sheets, it's often pretty complex legends we're having to create. Now you can make accurate legends in almost no time flat. And it's, I guess here's the other point I make with Data Wizard and creating legends. It's not just about saving time, but what you show in your legend, it's important, right? You don't want to miss something that might be in the drawing, or you don't want to show something that may not be in the drawing. Accurate plan sets matter for liability purposes and ease of construction and so forth, right? So those legends need to be tied exactly to what we are creating in our drawings. So that is Data Wizard. And the last one we wanted to show was the description key sets, the feature line to alignment. Let's show that. So it's a simple tool that will take feature lines that you might be doing some site grading with. Okay, now instead of generating Kogel points along this feature line, the better process is to generate an alignment and profile you can load in a data collector. It's way more flexible in the field, but generating that in the first place, we can't go and stake a feature line. We need alignment and profile. So running feature line to alignment on a feature line, we can create an alignment and profile. And those are really flexible. They export to XML files, they go out to Trimble RXL files, you name it. So I'll drop this in a profile view as well so we can see it. So there's the layout profile, and in plan view here is the alignment I generated. Okay. So you've got a whole bunch of curb lines to stake out. Okay, don't bother with making Kogel points. Just create alignments and profiles, export those to your data collector. I mentioned this works on survey figures as well. Works the exact same way. Here's some survey figures from some topo data. If I run this on here, get the same option. Maybe it's back to curb 2. Draw it in profile. There's that alignment. I can drop my profile if I want to see it over here. You don't necessarily have to create it in a profile view, right? But it's taking the exact geometry of that 3D survey figure. Okay, so that's feature line to alignment. Helps with different staking workflows. Last one I want to show you here is Survey Template Manager as well as Layer Boss. And this has to do with all those settings that make things work. Namely, the description key set in your template and the figure prefix database, which that's the table that dictates how your survey figures look, what layer they go on, and so forth. But of course, your layers play a role in this as well. So what is Survey Template Manager? What does it do? We can take these major table interfaces, export them to Excel, and do our work there. It's much more easy in Excel. And we can sync any of those changes back to our drawings and back to our templates. So let me show you a couple examples of how this works. First, I can export my description keys. We'll take the one in the drawing. We'll go ahead and export this out. And I get the whole description key set exporting to Excel. And it's what I call a smart export, in that, in the styles column, for example, it shows me the entire list of point styles that were in that drawing. So I can choose from them right here. Same with the label styles, same with the layers, okay? And then other things like the simple yes or no options, the columns are formatted to give you just those options. So now the kind of stuff, what can we do in Excel? Well, there's basically no faster interface to work. I'm working with tables. Simple deleting of things. Okay, if I'm copying and pasting, dragging and dropping, assigning different styles to things. What if I'm creating new point codes? I can just run copy in and insert copied cells. And I want to show you kind of a handy little thing we put into here where, say I'm generating a new code, but I don't have a style for it yet. We can use Survey Template Manager to auto-create styles for us. I simply type in the style name that I want it to be, hit OK when Excel prompts me, and then we've got an additional column that exports here, and that is a list of all the blocks that were in our drawing. So we can have it generate point styles automatically for us, simply selecting the blocks. I show another workflow in another one of my webcasts where we're building out a new survey template based on a new code list. And in this way, we're typing out all the codes, creating those, and then we're auto-generating dozens of point styles all at once. You don't have to do it manually. You can create it just based on the blocks that are in the drawing. You can do the same for the label styles, same for layers. It'll auto-create layers for you when you sync it back. Okay. Let's go ahead and save this. We'll sync this back. You can see how it works. I run the create, edit, description keys. I simply browse to that Excel file. I can create a new one right off the bat, or if I'm just making some edits to it, I can sync to my description key set. And in the case of that hydrant code, I can have it create new point styles for me automatically. When I hit next and I look at the next screen here, it gives me a report of what is about to happen. Here's the new codes, making a hydrant code. It's coding this red because it's not a point style that's in there, but it's going to automatically create it for me. Here's the changed codes. Had a lot of changes to the point label styles. I've got some deleted codes as well. Hit OK to that. Gives me a confirmation of what's going to happen. I hit OK. And then if I go ahead and look at that description key set again, we'll see some of those changes. The deleted codes. There is that hydrant code in here with the new hydrant point style, grabbing that proposed hydrant block. Okay. What about some other changes? Let me show you a couple other examples here. What if I'm trying to do something like I'm changing the layering scheme, right? And I don't want V node, but I want V point or something like that, right? We're trying to changing our layering scheme or something of that nature. And all these layers need to change from V node to V point, for example. Well, that starts to play a role in our layers themselves. Okay, so if you're manipulating your layers, you want to use Layer Boss. And so let me kind of show you how to handle something like that. A whole bunch of layers in my description key set, they all need to change. And I need to generate new layers at the same time. So what we would do in this case is we'd export our entire layer list. I'm going to export from the current drawing. And here you'll notice people have been using this tool already. A few new options in the new release that's coming out. We can export from our LIN files. All the line types that may not be loaded in the drawing, we can have those show up in the Excel file itself. We can have background colors show up in Excel, and we can also have STB plot styles show up in the Excel file. So I'll hit export and I'll show you what I mean by that. We'll go ahead and open that up right away. Here's my whole layer list. Now looking at those line types, okay, those show up here. These are line types that may not necessarily have been loaded in the drawing, but were in the LIN files that I checked on. And the same thing for the plot styles. If you're using STBs, we can export those so that we can set them in here as we wish without having to load them in the drawing itself. So if you choose one of these line types that are not loaded in the drawing, when you import it or sync this back to Civil 3D, it'll automatically load from those line type files. Okay. Now we were talking about taking our entire set of V node layers and changing it to V point. I'm going to make a copy of these and I'm going to insert all of those layers. And then what I can do is just simply grab all of these and do a find replace on them. And here's the beauty of Excel. We can do things like find replace across a whole set of rows or columns or cells all at once really quickly. Okay, so I've basically created a whole new layer set. I'll hit save to this. We'll come back to Civil 3D. We're going to sync that using Layer Boss. So I'll run the create edit DWG layers, and then we'll browse out to that layer list we were just working with in Excel. I'm going to sync these to the drawing layers in the current drawing. And then what we'll see on this next screen is a number of things. I've got a whole set of new layers that are created. Those are all those V-point layers. Updated layers, here's all the ones where I assign new line types and new plot styles. Some unchanged layers. And then if I had duplicates or deleted layers, that stuff would show up as well. So I hit OK to this. If I look at my layer list, now I get all those V-point layers as well as the V-node ones. Okay. Now, as far as swapping all those out in the description key set, right? That'd be a one row at a time kind of thing if we use just the native interface. Well, if we simply export those out again, export the description key set, we'll overwrite the old one. What I can do now is just run a find replace on node to point in here and make all those changes at once on my description key set. I'll save this, come back to Civil 3D and sync it. And here's all those changes where everything's changing from V node to V point. Hit OK. Okay. So I did what would have been a really timely edit in my description key sets and in my layers. I did it all at once. Now those layers are still hanging out in my layer manager, those V node ones. But if I deleted them from Excel and synced again, or just simply grab them right here, click the delete button, they'll go away because they're no longer in use. So mass changes across your templates, simple quick changes across your templates, all becomes a lot easier, a lot more flexible when we can do it in Excel, especially with the exports we get from Survey Template Manager and Layer Boss itself. So the other piece of Survey Template Manager works with our figure prefix database. We can do all those same kinds of things I just showed you with the description key set. The payoff with the figure prefix database is arguably even better because this is probably one of the glitchiest, slowest interfaces in Civil 3D. We can instead export that to Excel. Go ahead and open it up right away. And I get that whole figure prefix database. Now again, in some other webcasts, I've shown workflows of making new templates or different things, and you can get real clever in here using macros and formulas to auto-generate layers and all these kinds of things. Use extra tabs if you need. Survey Template Manager and Layer Boss sync with the first tab in the Excel file, so you can have working tabs over here to very easily overhaul, change, or create new templates and standards in there. So again, here making simple deletions. I can choose from the styles in here. If I was going to make a new style, would say that doesn't match the data validation list, but I'm fine with that, right? Perhaps I wanted to assign all new styles or something like that. I can save that, come back to Civil 3D, run the create edit figure prefix database, go and browse to that FDB Excel file. I can create a new one, or I can simply sync to an existing figure database. And then I'll also check on create new survey figure line styles at the same time. If I hit next, we'll see all these changed codes with the new style being assigned. We've got some deleted codes. I hit OK to that. Gives me a little confirmation. If we take a look at that figure database that we edited, we'll see that new style. We'll see a few of those deleted out of there, right? Really easy to work with these, all these settings that play a big role in your standards and in your workflows, but you can do it in an easy interface in Excel. So some of you might be asking, how do I get this stuff? How do I use this? Well, I know some of you guys, I recognize your names. I know a lot of you guys are using this stuff already. Maybe you just haven't fully plugged it into all your workflows. But these tools are all available in two simple suites. It's the CIM Project Suite and the CIM Manager Suite. Simply go to our website, scroll down, you'll see the CIM Project Suite and the CIM Manager Suite. You go here, you find information about the tools themselves, the pricing, licensing. I provide sample files on this stuff. You can download these These are sample files much like I use in my webcasts, and then detailed videos and descriptions on how to use this stuff. So either come right here or contact your reseller, ATG in the US or SolidCAD in Canada. With that, thanks everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a good afternoon, and we'll see you soon.